So there's a lot of different locks and grips we can use in pro wrestling. Unfortunately, I've seen them butchered time and time again. So I'm going to show you a few that I like to use and when they're most appropriate. So one of the main grips we use in wrestling is often called a monkey grip or an S grip. I guess the reason why it's called an S grip is because we're making somewhat of an S with our hands. This just involves our two hands, our fingers bending slightly and latching onto each other. So I find that this one works best for a lot of head clinches and headlocks. So from a headlock position, I can lock a monkey grip. If I'm in a clinch, from here I can lock it. So anytime there's a headlock, or sometimes I can use it with an arm lock as well, but I find that with smaller limbs like arms and legs, it's not an effective grip and often you'll slip out. So what I do suggest, if you're going to use a headlock with the S grip, have your headlocking arm so that your wrist is up against their face and you're locking it with your opposite hand underneath. Sometimes I see people going the reverse. Now with that, it's not quite as tight a grip. It can work well if you want to dig the knuckles in, but I find you've got a much more secure grip if you're turning your forearm this way. The next grip we want to go to is a ball and socket grip. So this one is really good for a waist lock. So this is where we have our arm, and just like a ball and socket, we're going to wrap our fingers around our wrist bone, just like a latch. I like to keep my thumbs tucked in at all times with this one. So in a waist lock position, nice and tight on the waist, ball and socket, and then pull in to reduce the gap. You always want to reduce the amount of space in the hold. You never want to have a lot of air. The next one is a very grappling or jiu-jitsu heavy grip. This is a Gable Grip. This is probably one of my favorites. I don't see it much in pro wrestling, but obviously in grappling they use it all the time. So the Gable Grip involves thumbs together. We're going to basically clap our hands just like this, and then we close our fingers. Now this one's effective for heaps of different holds from all sorts of situations. Even if I was going to use something like a headlock, if I didn't want to use a conventional S grip or monkey grip, I could use a Gable Grip, and as you can see, it often actually tightens up the space, which is why I prefer it in a lot of situations. So if you're ever finding yourself stuck where you don't really know which grip to use, the S grip is almost like a best of all worlds. And the final grip I'm going to show you, this one is often called a figure four grip in catch wrestling, and it's the same grip we use for our double wrist lock. Now with the figure four, we're making sure we're gripping the affected limb, and then our opposite hand is hooking over the top and gripping our own wrist, very similar to the ball and socket. I like to use this one if I'm targeting any limbs like the arms or legs. So if I'm going to target the arm, I get nice and high up on the shoulder, figure four the grip, and I've got a really tight lock. If you go to your back and I want to target the leg, maybe I'm going to go for a half crab or something like that, exactly the same. I want to get nice and deep. I want to hook onto the affected limb, hook my own wrist, and then away I go. So there's 4 grips that you can use next time you're in a pro wrestling ring, anytime you're chain wrestling or grappling. One thing I also need to add, I see a lot of this. So this is a super dangerous grip in wrestling. I see people using it all the time for full Nelsons or clinches. So often they'll be in this position and they lock their fingers up. Now that might feel nice and tight, but as soon as your opponent starts breaking that grip, you can damage your own fingers very, very easily.
If you want to see more videos like this, click on the subscribe button, spread the word, and if you have any questions or requests for World-Beater Wrestling, don't be afraid to comment below.